Hello and welcome to the Liner Notes podcast. I'm Phil, and on today's episode we're joined by none other than American Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, Ivor Novello Award winner, and one of the most influential drummers of all time, Mr. Bobby Elliott of the Hollies. We sat down together a couple of weeks ago, and in preparation for the interview I read his book, It Ain't Heavy, It's My Story. Bob actually kept really detailed, comprehensive daily diaries throughout most of his career, and that's what the book draws from. Such great detail in there that perhaps might have been lost otherwise, so it's a great read. So he talks us through the early days growing up in Burnley and the music scene in Elton, his first couple of bands and what led him to the drummer's chair in the Hollies. He talks about his time spent recording in Abbey Road, his time in the States and touring the world. He's such a humble guy, and what I took from the book, and as well as the conversation we had, it seemed like he was as fascinated by his own fame and success as everybody else, really. He has a kind of detachment from it, and a bit of a sort of giddiness. And it's fantastic to see he's still got such energy into his 80s now, and he's actually been out gigging a couple of days before we sat down together, and despite all his achievements and the people that he's rubbed shoulders with throughout the years, he's just so grounded, great sense of humour. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I'm always open to your inputs as well. If you want to drop me an email at phil@offthefloor.media with any guest suggestions or anything that you'd like to see or contribute, that'd be fantastic. But this is a conversation with Mr. Bobby Elliott of the Hollies. Can you sort of go back to your sort of early formative years?
Well, I can start right at the very beginning. I was born on the outskirts of Burnley at Park Hill, and went to the little school at Holmes Chapel, crossing the Ram at Lancashire. Passed my 11 plus, went to Nelson Grammar School. Because we lived across the road at Park Hill, we're in the county. The other side of the road would have been in Burnley, and I would have gone to Burnley Grammar School. But because it was on the wrong side of the road, we had to travel all the way to Burnley Centre, change onto another bus, and then got all the way to Nelson Grammar. But happy days. So from there, I had a good pal in our phone called Bob Palmer, and we were sort of inching into jazz. You know, the rock thing had barely started, but we were into jazz, like Jerry Mulligan, Charlie Parker, stuff like that. And Bob and I would discuss at night when I was home at Pike Hill. Mum had a shop there, and we lived above the shop. If you could live above the shop in a bungalow, but I had a dormer bedroom above the shop, and I created a drum kit out of biscuit tins from the shop. I discovered the Voice of America on shortwave, and I used to if I could tune in and listen to, this is Willis Conover from the Voice of America, broadcasting from Tangier, and I'd listen to American jazz. You couldn't get it in, all you had then was the light program and the home service, and possibly Radio Luxembourg for pop stuff. So I got round, so I'm at grammar school and times going on, and Bob Palmer was playing double bass at the Sefton in Cone. And why didn't you come up? They had this old guy on drums. It was a six-piece band, the George Buckley Band, two sax players, alto and tenor, and a crooner, and George on drums, who was four on the floor man, you know, and that was great. So at that time, we just discovered pints of bitter at the Talbot at Burnley, and I used to go there with pals and thought it was wonderful. And Bob said, "Come up the Sefton." All right, and I ended up sitting there all night with a pint or a half a mile or something in front of the band, because at one point George, the drummer, would say, "Bob, come on," and he'd invite me up to play drums. And I was in heaven, and he'd do the Breakaway Blues, which was Sunny Side in the Street, Ain't Misbehaving, and another one. I would then get up and play, and George would go to the front and croon and sing. And that was magic for me. That was it. That was magic. I lived at Roughly. Mum and Dad had moved to Roughly by then. My dad had a little van, and he'd run me sort of to the outskirts of Corn, but I had to walk the rest of the way, and I paid for his petrol and all this, that, and the other. And it built from there, and soon I was playing at the Jazz Club in Rottenstall above the Queen's Hotel every Thursday. And by that time I met Tony Hicks, who was like a 13, 14-year-old wonder kid. I saw him down in Elton, and I thought, wow, he had a little Futurama guitar, and he had his little band called the Dolphins. And by that time, I met his sister Maureen. I didn't know they were connected. I was down at the Talbot one night. I bought Maureen a cider. We got the steam train back to Nelson, and I walked her home, 22 Bankhouse Road, and we went in. And, would you like a coffee? Oh, yes. Sat down. And what's that? There's a guitar there, a Futurama in the cup. Oh, that's our kids. He drives me mad with it. It was Tony's sister. I had no idea the connection. I was with a couple of little groups at that time. It was building.
When you were sitting in with the band, that was a sort of a nice supportive environment for you. You had a bit of a mentor in the drummer in there.
That was me. That was... It was the busking, the improvisation of the jazz fed into my playing. They just throw stuff at me and I play it, and that's how I've always been. And you've got to, be on your toes then. But yeah, we the Dolphins were moving on, and we got quite a reputation because we played all around the north of England and farther afield. We were backing southern artists who had hit records like Mike Son and Wendy Rich. Come outside, and I'm on drums, Tony's on guitar, and various other artists came up, and word got round about us being pretty good, and this band called the Hollies was just forming, and Ron Richards, George Martin's sidekick, had seen them. I think they'd been at the Cavern, and he'd seen them there. And they had a guitar player who didn't want to turn pro or anything like that. So we played the Oasis in Manchester quite a lot. We were quite well known in there. And we had this guy, Alan Cheetham, Tony, this gig with the Hollies. You couldn't take it. No. Tony said, no, I'm going to stay with Bob and down. Anyway, he relented. And his dad, a wonderful man, mechanic at Hills Pharmaceuticals. And he said, Dad, what should I do? What do you mean? It's, well, I've been offered a job with Hollies. Yeah. How much they pay you? Well, they don't have much money. He said, well, tell them if they could pay £15 a week, he'll join. And he did. And they paid him £15 a week. And they weren't earning that. They were contributed to get it. Yeah. So the Hollies were formed. But I wasn't there then. This was a few months before. They had a guy called Don who drove the van. Pretty soon, Tony phoned up his mum, and I'm at his mum seeing Maureen, and Peggy, his mum, said, Tony said there's a job going with Shane Fenton and the Fentons. Oh, I said, it's not my sort of stuff, really. Anyway, there's an audition at King's Hall, Stoke-on-Trent. My dad drove me down. Great, yeah. Can you come to London on Monday? That's where we're auditioning all the rest of them. So Dad drove me down again, paid him for the petrol, stayed in a little bed and breakfast overnight. So it was pissing down at the bottom, excuse me, listeners. Bottom of Tottenham Court Road, there was a little street off to the side, and it was raining. I could see guys stood in raincoats, one or two with drumsticks sticking out the pockets. This must have been the place. I'm at the back of the queue, and I got the gig. There was about 8 or 10 guys in front of me, and later found out that Keith Moo was number 3, and the guy from Fleetwood Mac was in the queue, a big tall guy was in the queue as well. I got the gig. So I'm with Shane Fenton, and they were based in Mansfield, and his mum really looked after me. I had my own bedroom and everything. But I wanted to be with the Hollies, and I soon was. The drummer moved over, sort of thing, and I left the Fentos, and they were in Abbey Road Studios. number 3 studio, and number 2, one or the other, and it was solid work. But what I realised at that time, one of our first recordings, it was a cover of a song called "Stay" by Maurice Williams, and but we did it a bit up tempo. I mean, we were doing live shows everywhere, you know, dance halls all around the country, and our plan was to excite the audience. So everything was like full on 100 mile an hour, and it worked. But we only had Tony on guitar, Bernie on bass, and me on drums. Nash had an acoustic guitar in his hand, but he was never plugged in. So that's how we went for it. But "Stay" on the recording, they were doing like back vocals of "Mama don't mind," bop bop did, and my bass drum was going bop bop, of course. And Ron, our producer, George Martin's colleague, right, bang on 6 o'clock, it was round to the Abbey Tavern for a little beverage. So I get to the bar and I'm thinking, bass drum, I can't hear the bass drum enough. So Peter Pound, the engineer, rather posh for us because he was outside, but he had quite a high pitched voice. I said, out to the bar, Peter, can I get you a drink? Oh, that's very kind of you, Bobby. I shall have a whiskey mac, please. I got him a whiskey mac. After that, a sip, I said, by the way, Pete, I said, can we not get more meat out of that bass drum? And the microphone on the bass drum. Well, here at Abbey Road, we find that one microphone is quite enough, quite sufficient. Oh, okay. So it goes on a bit. It's, Peter, can I get you another? Yeah. So, Peter, well, when we get back, let's I'll try something when we get back. So we get back, we're in Studio 3, and in those days you had the full heads on, everything, because you were playing dance halls and theatres, no amplification, certainly for drums. So it was a case of tuning everything, so it hit the back wall. And so, anyway, he brought the mic out, put it on the bass drum, and problem, because I didn't dump that bass drum at the front head at all, so it was like tympanic. Oh, Bobby, we have a problem here, I thought. Torpedo. No, so inside my case had my granny's old curtains. So I grabbed one of granny's curtains on, just laid it over the front of the bass drum, so it just touched the head. Perfect. And that's on Stay now. Oh. So we had 2 mics on the kit. And some years ago, I didn't realise, a guy popped out, we were down there doing something, and a guy popped out, hey, you were the first guy to have two mics on a drum kit here. And I didn't realise. I thought was the obvious way to go. Now there's a mic on everything. Yeah.
We're just rewinding a little bit. Your sort of first professional gig, you were working down the pit, weren't you, at the time? I was
in the central workshop. I was an apprentice engineer, and part of it meant that you went down number 4 shaft at Bank Hall. Yeah. You
told your boss that you'd got your first professional gig and you were off, and then he held your job open for you, did he? He said you're else.
Yeah. So I'm still an apprentice. At that time, you had to serve 5 years. Right. So I'd done everything. I'd worked down the pit. I'd worked on a lathe. I'd been in the drawing office. And I'm probably on about my final year. And this gig came up. And I was told you about. So I had to have my notice in. So I had to go and see Mr. Bill Walton, the head of the central workshop. Now then, lad, what do you want? Well, Mr. Walton, I've got to leave. I'm leaving. Whatever I said. Well, you haven't served your time yet, lad. Well, no. What are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to be a drummer in the band. And he went, I tell you what, lad, I'll keep your job for 2 weeks and I'll see you later. And it never went by. Not many people know that.
Did you have any sort of role models that had gone and done it? When you were growing up, I'm guessing there were no sort of natural path to where you ended up.
It's weird, isn't it? I mean, I had Tony Hicks, who I knew all the musicians in the area. I tell you, one guy, Alan Kendall, Bee Gees guitar player.
Right.
So we had loads of talent round here.
Right.
Al Kentley was in a little band round here back at the time of the Dolphins called the Meteors. And Al, well, you listen to the Bee Gees, so that's Kendall.
Right.
Bloody Nelson. Yeah.
It seemed to me from reading the book that the play the drums was an end in itself. You know, you were so caught up in it, obsessed with it. Any kind of success was a bit of a byproduct from that. You know, you didn't set out with bright lights in mind. It was just
Not at all. It was just the magnet of the drums, and also when I saw out playing, I would sit in at the Astoria with the Jimi Hendrix Orchestra. I'd play the Down Nelson Imp with a big band, even though my reading was not very good, but I could get away with it, as we say in the business. So I was hanging out with older musicians, and it was a joy just to be listening to them. And there was a guy called Brian Duff. He was a photographer for the Daily Express and later the Telegraph, and he was from around here. And he played in the Jimi Hendrix Orchestra in Rottenstall, but he's passed now. But I had some joyous times with him after he'd retired, having a coffee in Nelson or something like that. And he'd be telling me the stories about Gracie Fields and how he took pictures of Harold Wilson. And he had a picture of he'd taken a Buddy Rich in the bath with nothing on. He was a likeable, lovable, roguish guy. A pretty fine drummer, but also a top photographer. So those sort of characters drew me into it.
So just going back to sort of those early days of the Hollies, it seemed like the pace were pretty frantic. You were sort of on the road a lot. You were slotting these recording dates in between. Was it sort of a case of capturing the live sound that you'd crafted, just a case of getting in the studio and pressing record? You were working pretty quickly in the studio when you were
definitely quick.
Yeah,
that's the way that Ron Richards worked. We mentioned George Martin, who we worked with a lot, but George would have taken time and sat with you at the piano and worked things out. Ron wasn't like that. He was a Tin Pan Alley man. He'd been a song progger in his earlier life, and he just wanted to, red light on and right next. It was that sort of thing. But he had an ear for what was right. He had a talent that wasn't for sitting down and writing dots. But he was good. It was good for the band at the time. But we did. I think Elton John said later on, because we did a recording. The Ain't Heavy's my brother with Elton. And I think Elton said afterwards, he said, "Let's just take a bit more time with the recordings." And that wasn't Ron. Ron was wanted to be on to the next thing. Elton came in, and he played the lovely piano on the Ain't Heavy. He played on quite a few of our tracks, but it was French White then. There was a grand piano there. We didn't move it. I set my drums up next to it, because if you move the piano so they can move it out too. And we did it in a couple of takes. Thought he was just singing a guide vocal in the corner so we could hear it. The vocals were done a bit later. And but I remember Elton did an interview and said, "I think they should just take a little bit more time to record." Because I said one thing. I was, playing backbeat, but at one point the stick just did a lazy sort of slip. When we're playing it back, we'll just scamper upstairs to have a listen, you see. If we knew we had the take, Ron would always have one phrase, "Come and have a listen."
Right.
If he didn't say that, you knew you were shit. So up we went, and I said, "Ron," the stick just slipped a bit there. He said, "Don't worry, Bob, when we get the strings, I knew what to do."
Well, yeah, it certainly sounded like, definitely in the early days, this pace was so frantic. It was just a case of getting in and hitting record and capturing that. I mean, and the vocals are so tight as well. There's no auto-tune, but it's
no takes, no auto-tune.
No.
And there was a lot of our recordings, as I said earlier, there's me on drums, Tony on guitar, Eric Haydock or Bernie Cowart on bass, and vocals. Tony played a rhythm and a lead almost at the same time. That was his style, and we discovered that when we were kids and we were listening to Johnny Kidd and the Pirates and all that, and we saw them. But one time they played at Barlick at the Majestic, and the guy who played on Shaking All Over was a guy called Joe Barretti, a Scotsman, and Brian Gregg on bass and Clem Catini on drums. That was the original Pirates. And we soon realised that they didn't have the rhythm player, so it was just bass, lead and drums. And Tony thought that was a great idea, and that's what we did. In Abbey Road studios, the walls are littered with timpani, glockenspiels and all that. So we went, what can we use? I'm on Jingle Bells at one point. Pay you back with interest. Yeah. So we were set loose in this treasure trove of... and under the stairs at number 2 studio, the steps come down, so there's a cupboard underneath, still there, because I was there when Mary McCartney were doing a documentary. But in those days, 63, 64, you looked in that cupboard, and there were all the old-fashioned sound effects, like I think that you want for thunder, or a grovel for I hear footsteps on the drive, and bells, and the fireman rushes in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know what that is. It's a Tony's house, yeah. But now it's just got microphones in. But in those days, we were in there, and there were all the ship sirens and all that.
Yeah.
Where's Paul Boys in cover?
Can you speak a little bit about your first few trips over to the States and how you were received over there and how all that came about?
Very, very happily. The States it was a revelation, and it was a case of going to where it all came from. All our biggest influences were obviously American, I think. But 1965, we were delayed. In those days, you had to have a swap. So if a British artist wanted to go over there, you had to have an American come back. So, because it was all one-way traffic then, the British invasion, it was called, the Americans called it the British invasions. The Beatles had started it, due credit, but British bands were going over. We were stuck at the airport. We had to wait for like 2 or 3 days before they could get the exchange name. And it turned out we were swapped for the Count Basie Orchestra.
Wow. So it was one in, one out system sort of thing, right?
So they could fill it, yeah.
Yeah.
Come on. So, we flew over and then landed in New York. And the joy was we were playing on Broadway at the Paramount Theatre. And we were doing 5 shows a day. Wow. 5 shows a day for all the Easter period. It was a Soupy Sales Easter show. And Soupy Sales was a children's entertainer, but an all-round entertainer. He had these in-jokes, so like Sinatra and that were fans of his. But it started at 9 in the morning with a movie. The Unsinkable Molly Brown, I think it was. Then there was a rock show, but you're only allowed to do 2 songs.
You'd walked in on some kind of police incident, hadn't you, or something, with Little Richard?
Little Richard was on the show with a guitar player, Jimi Hendrix, and he had his entourage with him, but you're only allowed 2 songs. And he'd overrun. And he was so I'm coming up the steps and screaming and shouting, and Richard's there halfway in, halfway out of the lift. There's a cop there, American cop, tubby cop, with a pistol stuck in Richard's head. And Richard's shouting, "Those little white girls out there love me." Richard, you've overrun again, sort of thing. The stage manager there. And he was asked to leave the show, thrown off the show. But we made probably the only white act on there at that time. It was the King Curtis Orchestra, fantastic 16-piece band. And I was in heaven because I was palling on with the drummer, Ray Lucas, who was a fine player. But also, after hours, I could go down Greenwich Village, and there were 2 jazz clubs down there. The Village Vanguard, where you didn't pay you went in and you had a cover charge on your beer. And I could sit like here, and there's Miles Davis, and lots of names. The Americans didn't want to know about them then because it was all British invasion and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they had all this talent there. It was unbelievable. Charlie Mingus, I was who's on tonight? Charlie Mingus is on. All of a sudden, the Black Stingray came down, parked at the front door with the top down. Double bass in the passenger seat.
Right.
Mingus in a long black leather coat. I just followed him in. And I sat there, nobody bothered me. And just going around New York, just across the road, one night it said, Gene Krupa. Well, that was one of my heroes when I was growing up. And he was there, a long ball full of beers and tips. Or there were people just leave dollar bills in the back for the waiters. The waiters were all in dicky bows and things, and it was like business people and all that. Behind the ball, above the ball, is a lonely Gene Krupa on a sling-along drum kit with a sax player.
Wow.
Nothing else. And there is my hero, and everybody's ignoring him, and it's like plodding away there with his brushes or whatever. And I wish I'd have gone and spoken to him afterwards. You know, I just left it, but he didn't live much longer than that. But he was one of the great drummers of all time.
But you got the sense that those American jazz musicians were being pushed out in favour of the British invasion bands. And
That's what he felt. Yeah. I thought, well, what about them? What about Cabeza? Oh, yeah, no, we're going to see the Beatles. But they're all kids. They're all our age. They're all kids or young.
Yeah. And you're there able to see your heroes at close quarters.
I know.
Like I said, these legends that you'd sort of been absorbing through radio and bits of records that you could get your hands on back home, and then all of a sudden you're in the same room in close quarters.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. That was the most joyous part. And so from 1965 onwards, went to the States quite a lot. Sometimes we were there for like 2 or 3 months, and that was good. And you sometimes on the travelling, but it was a joy, you know. And TV shows you're doing, you know. Smothers Brothers and all and the chat shows, and it's just another world for us then. It's changed a bit now, but yeah, and then to discover the West Coast and Hollywood and being in the hills, and Nash became friendly with Mama Cass from the Mamas and Papas, and we used to say at our house, it was another planet. It was a totally different planet. And we'd go to the Whiskey A Go Go, and we'd sit there and there'd be various bands on, just low-key stuff. But one night I was sat there, and I'm sat at a table with Keith Moon, and he's dressed in full hunting pig. He'd been on a parade through Hollywood, and he'd been, and he's got a couple of nice ladies each side of him, and he's got a bottle of Courvoisier brandy on the table. And this band, this is going to be our last song, man. Oh, shame. Totally out of control.
Yeah.
But I'd known him. I first met Mooney when they'd done their first Ready Steady Go from Wembley. I was stood there waiting to go on with him there. You know, he just did it during the day, and he was just a quiet little shy guy. He was quite shy at first,
right?
And then he maybe got, you know, his reputation with his expressions and his show. I wouldn't say it went to his head. That's probably the wrong phrase, but. He changed.
He had a real wild side to his character.
Yeah. I remember me and Clark, after hours, would go down as a club in the Scotch of St James.
Right.
And he went downstairs, but at the top there was a cloakroom and loads of these wooden hangers. And Clark had this thing about karate, and he could break anything. So we could come in. So Clarkie was like in charge, you know, and Keith Moon was there watching him. Oh, what are you going to do with those coat hangers? Watch this, Keith. And he got the two chairs and puts all these coat hangers across and starts smashing them like this. Then Moon is going to the cloakroom, coming up, oh, puts the coat hangers. He was totally outraged. Oh, dear.
Well, that was one thing in the book, because you were obviously spending his time on the West Coast and mixing with, I guess, all that Laurel Canyon lot. And you said
right.
You'd done like a showcase at Whiskey A Go Go, and you had the who's who of that sort of West Coast scene there.
Yeah, we did, and it was like
was that serving as more of a showcase for Graham?
It was a record company's idea that we did it. I mean, it did turn out to be a showcase for Graham because he'd met his new friends, you know, like Cass Elliott and Buffalo Springfield, those guys. So it worked well, and that's what Graham wanted. He'd split with his first wife, Rose, and he wanted a way, you know, and it just worked well for him. He wrote Marrakesh Express, and we didn't really like it. We recorded it, but he had a new family at the other side.
Yeah. Did you get the sense he was sort of disengaging with the band, with the Hollies at the time? because you had a new booker, didn't you, that was explored, trying to put you in the sort of British club scene and Batley Variety.
Yeah, Jimmy Smith and all that stuff. Yeah, and Harold Davison. Yeah,
but Graham was sort of. He said he was sort of making it fairly obvious that he didn't really want to be there. He wanted to be on the other side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, we understood that, and we had to go where the work was in a way. And the money. I mean, we offered a big lump of money. You didn't take it in this game. But Graham had met a load of new friends over there, and we understood he didn't have any reason to stay here. He met Joni over there. I was with him in Ottawa in Canada, where we'd come back. We'd done a gig. Graham's with the band, but we'd done a gig, and somebody said, "Oh, there's a bit of a party going on farther up the corridor. It's a record company and such." So we're all, I'm tired really. I'm just going, yeah, I'll come with it. So we go in, and just where you put your suitcase down, I think there's this lovely blonde sat there, and that was Joni. And Graham said, that's Joni Beach up there. And so I left him at it. Following morning, we had a day off, but we were travelling over to Winnipeg or West Coast. And I said to our road manager, Graham, oh, he's coming along later. I said, where is he? He's in that room next to you there. And door was slightly ajar. And I go in, and he's sat up in bed with Joni. Joni's here. He's there. And they've got tea. He loved his tea. He was good Englishman. And Joni. Oh, we'll catch you later. We'll see you later. Hey, Bobby, just having a say. Joni's just written this song. Joni just played that song for Bob. I look at life from both sides. I didn't know what it was then.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, Joni.
Again, going back to the book, I found it really warming that you always seem to like to come back to this area. Did you see that as a chance to reset and ground yourself a little bit? I mean, like, because in one breath you're talking about being next door to Joni Mitchell, and then you're back in roughly having a pint in Bayos day after or something. Yeah,
you got it all at the Sparrow Oak.
Yeah.
That was my grounding thing. It was a totally different world. I had the two worlds, and I just loved to jump between one and the other. But some clung to it. Some wanted it full on. But I must be a bit weird or something. I could take so much of it. Going down these wonderful clubs and rubbing shoulders with Scotch or St James and whatever. So I've done all that, seen it all. But I'm happy to go up to Sparrow and have a pint. Cross gates with the old farmers. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like you were really keen to get home in between.
I wouldn't say I was really keen, but if there was this gap.
Yeah.
And all the rest of the lads probably had houses down there then.
Yeah.
So I lived in Roughlee then. Mum and Dad moved to Roughlee. I didn't even have my own place then. So it was, I don't know, it worked out. I was very happy.
Yeah, you saw it as a chance to just reset, recalibrate.
Yeah, there was always, I always used to like train travel. So as soon as that train started pulling out of King's Cross or Euston, sigh of relief, pressure off. But I think that was the joy. I mean, I could always jump back in, and I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, given the fact that you'd been working at the mine and stuff like that, probably there'd be a lot of people that would take the first chance to run away and never come back. Yeah, like I said, dual life sort of thing. You were that's what really struck me, that you were in one breath you were rubbing shoulders with whoever, and then you were back here. Yeah. Resetting, recalibrating, ready to go again. Yeah, just like two total different worlds. But perhaps you needed the two sides of it. Perhaps one was just unsustainable on its own, and you needed that reset.
I mean, there's a club on Cromwell Road, the Cromwellian Club. I used to go in there. One night I was in there with Jimmy Page, and I knew Jimmy. He was a session guy, and he played with you name it. And they said, we were just putting a band together, and it was at Led Zepp. And he said, we're just waiting for a drummer to come off tour with Woke Me Up in the Morning Dew, whatever it's called. Anyway, and they were waiting for John Bonham. They were waiting for Bonham to come back from... So they had we'd worked with both those guys. So Jimmy Page had worked with us on I've got which track, but John Paul Jones had played on a track of ours as well. So I'd worked with both those guys. So I'm drinking with Jimmy Page, and he's talking about forming the Led Zeppelin following day.
Oh. You were nearly poached by McCartney, weren't you, for the Wings job?
Yeah. Yeah, I was. It was with his missus, and he'd like to pop in, and he'd come to the piano in the studio too. I'll just you say goodbye, and I say hello, goodbye. Oh yeah, very nice, Paul. He's just going up the steps. Clarky says, "Hey, Paul, nice song that. Let me know when you want some lyrics." Yeah, McCartney. It was good fun.
So after Graham decided to go over to the States, can you just sort of talk about that period there? I suppose you had sort of existing commitments and you needed to keep the momentum up. Just in terms of who came in and perhaps the dynamic shift within the band then.
The last show he did with us was at the Palladium, and it was a thing called Save Rave. It was a charity show, and it was my birthday, December 8th. And so it went after that, and we got Terry Silvestri, Scouser, and Terry did a good job vocally. So we carried on smoothly, and then, you know, talk about Graham Nice and a lovely guy and talented guy, but we started having the bigger hits then. You know, we had a Sorry Susan, that was a top fiver, but then you had the Ain't You Heavy, My Brother, and then Long Cold War in a Black Dress and Anthony Green. So, you know, it was just nice because you think, oh, Graham's leaving. Oh, they've on it. No, Graham was the lead and Graham was the spokesman.
Right.
Graham liked to, you know, voice his opinion. Well, we all did, but Graham was a lead, the self-proclaimed leader. Clarky wasn't interested in leading. Clarky wanted to sing and have a pint and play his harmonica. No, I spoke to Alan Clarky just last week. So
oh wow,
yeah, he's okay. He's had a bit of a stroke, but he invited me down for dinner. He's down Newport Pagnell down there. Yeah, so it's nice to keep in touch.
Yeah. And then, so beyond that, and was it the Scandinavian?
Mikael Rigfors.
Yeah.
Oh, that was total suicide. So we just signed to Polydor. So Polydor wanted a new track, so we're leaving Polyphone, EMI, and moving to Polydor, Red Label. And at that time, Clark had said, I want to do my own album. Tony said, well, if you want, go and do your own album if you want, but you don't do it with us, one thing. And it was that sort of a gesture. We've been working in Sweden a lot, wonderful. And in those days, Sweden was a wonderful place. We'd play the folk box, and it was a joy. And we'd met this guy, we'd seen this band called Bamboo, and it was Mikael Rigfors was one of the singers. And Tony he thought that guy had talent. So when Clarky started playing up, so to speak, why don't we get that guy? Someone, he hardly speaks bloody English. It's Swedish. Ronka, which means wanker. That's Swedish. You couldn't. So he came over a few times, and he was good. He was a talented lad. But at that time, Long Cold Woman was in the last batch from the EMI Parlophone stuff, and we just need this one track to complete the album. And CBS Epic were crying out for it. Don Ellis, where's the album? We need that. So we did. Clarky had written Long Cold Woman. He comes in. He'd been to the pub, sits down. So I did it. I said, can we slow it down a bit? Like that will do. So it went on. Couple of takes, we had it, and we didn't have an intro. And I said to Clarky, when you sit down in the dressing room, you pick the guitar, and he had this thing. I think he was trying to play classical gas, and it wasn't working out. It came out like that. I said, let's stick that on the front. Yeah. Then you see me on guitar.
Yeah. I wondered about that actually. It's fairly sort of on its own compared to the rest of the track, isn't he? Real sort of distinctive.
It gets played on TV and things, just that. On whatever, I can't remember what, but yeah. So we did it, and we had it down in like 1 or 2 takes. Clarky put the vocal on, and that was it. Because we didn't have the time. We didn't have time to put clever harmonies onto it.
Right.
We'd have probably ruined it with harmony. So the Americans got the album. Don Ellis phones Tony up and said, "Hey, Tony, that Cool Woman, we want that out as a single." Well, yeah, go on then. Like number 1 of it. Amazing. Not anything on it. But Clarky sings it well, and it's his song. He wrote it with a guy called Roger Cook. Mikael Rigfors, he'd come over here, and we did a song called The Baby that was in the top 20, I think. And we did a whole couple of albums with him and toured America with him just at the time when Long Cool Woman was number 1.
Right.
So we're going over there with a guy that doesn't speak much English and seeing Long Cool Woman in a drape, we got away with it, but what a ridiculous state of affairs.
So it was, you didn't feel totally settled in that lineup.
He had talent. We did some good gigs, so we did a couple of good albums. But then we met Clarky again, and he called all his forgiveness.
Right.
Clarky's back.
He got his old job back.
Yeah. His albums and nothing. But I know Clarky. He's a great talent. And so we got away with that. That was another episode.
Beyond that, Peter Howarth come on board.
Pete is the best thing I've ever come across, and a great guitar player. We were down rehearsing last week with the guys working out the way forward. We won't go into that too much just now. But Pete is a Blackpool lad originally. He lives in North London, has done for years. But it's such a joy to work with. A great singer on it is. And as I say, great guitar player. So Pete's very important. And the rest of the guys are good. We've got Ray Stiles on bass, who was with Mud. He's been with us for about 40 years or something. Ian Parker on keys, who's, again, a key guy. Great arranger. Steve Laurie on the other guitar. So, they're all pretty talented lads, so it makes life easier for me. But I've got to be the guiding light.
Looking back more broadly, is there any kind of real highlights that you can pick out from your career? Any kind of moments where you just thought, "Wow, is this happening to me?" Lads from Lancashire,
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not from Lancashire, in the Rock and American Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That was a joy, and I've got the statuette on the whatever it is on the. Oh no, it's the other. The statuette is the Ivor Novello Award. Next to the Ivor Novello, I have this beautiful thing that is to Bobby Elliott being installed in the American Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh.
So that was a joy.
And where do you have those awards?
Hey?
Where do you have them at home?
In the downstairs loo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a career.
Hell of a journey.
Yeah. Reading the book, it made me really sort of proud to be from around here, and the fact that you took so much comfort in coming back. And, yeah, so many relatable aspects to it, sort of geographically, all these little landmarks, like the night spots and all this.
Well, we should mention Nelson Imperial, because everybody was there apart from Frank Sinatra and Cliff Richard. Everybody else was there. And that was one of our little sort of breeding ground, our little honing spot where I first saw Tony play as well. But there were lots of other little venues, and there was a place in Burnley, the old Empress, that got burnt down. And, they got the Meccas, but these little clubs where we, in our childhood, in our early teens, we could play church halls and stuff like that, where it didn't really. Well, it mattered to us, but it didn't really be. Well, what they do, it was all starting. There was no, there's no big star thing. It was just you wanted to play, and hone your talents.
And there were enough sort of outlets to do that in a nice, forgiving environment.
Yeah, equipment didn't come into it. It just, it's got a guitar. Yeah, drunk it. Yeah, he has his own mic. Oh, right. I said years ago, when the old road came over from Manchester, you got to the top of the hill and you looked down, it was a basin. And you had, like Burnley, Nelson and Colne. And it was like, that was like a breeding, like a pond.
Yeah.
A pond of breeding musos and whatever else.
Yeah, that's something that fascinates me. Like those working class areas, there seem to be a correlation between that and the musical output. I suppose when industry was really thriving locally, there were, like you mentioned, there were a lot of sort of night spots, places to go, places to play, and perhaps that just all sort of fed into it. No, but like I say, I really, really appreciate you. It's a hell of a career.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I found the local references really fascinating when he'd be over in the States with Joni Mitchell and sat next to Keith Moon, and in the next breath he's back having a pint in his local pub, which is a couple of miles away from my house. These two parallel worlds seem to exist perfectly comfortably next to each other. So, like I said, if you've got anything that you'd like to add or contribute, or any kind of guest suggestions, please feel free to email me at phil@offthefloor.media, and I'll pick that up and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.